What is up, everybody? ZTV, Zunigaistheman, whatever. So, I thought instead of the typical, article reaction type of content I've been doing lately on here on the Variety channel, I thought, why not talk about something that kind of, in a way, hits close to home? And that is Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder, otherwise known as ADHD. Now, for those who've never heard the story, I was actually diagnosed with this in the fall of 2009, so I was 17 at the time. Before I read over the article, I might as well tell my story. Originally, when I was diagnosed with this, my mom brought me to a psychiatrist because she noticed my performance in school wasn't the best, even though my junior year was better than my sophomore and freshman years, because those 2 years I just didn't care. But she wanted me to get on medication, and I'll eventually talk about this at some point under my own experiences. Back when she thought my school issues were due to myself being diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, which was all the way back in 7th grade, and she figured, oh, if we talk to a therapist, maybe we'll be able to get you on medication, help improve your schoolwork. Instead, we find out that there was no way to have medication for that, and instead I was diagnosed with, as mentioned, ADHD. So I'm going to go over this and kind of talk about what's here in the Wikipedia article and how that kind of relates to me in a way. So as you see here, Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder, yeah, that's what the ADHD stands for, not Attention Deficit High Definition, is a neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity, which are pervasive, impairing, and otherwise age inappropriate. Some individuals with ADHD also display difficulty regulating emotions or problems with executive function. And I try highlighting over that. Citing cognitive processes that are necessary for the cognitive control of behavior, selecting and suggesting successfully monitoring behaviors that facilitate the attainment of chosen goals. Executive functions include basic cognitive progress. Yeah, I'm not going to know that article. For a diagnosis, symptoms must be present for more than 6 months and cause problems in at least 2 settings, such as school, home, work, or recreational activities. So I guess for myself, it must have been school and home, because like I said, I was 17 when I was diagnosed. And children problems paid attention may result in poor school performance. But then again, with children nowadays, they'll get diagnosed with anything for that, even though they don't realize, oh, maybe they don't have something going on with them in terms of a learning disability of sorts. Maybe they're just children. Additionally, it's associated with other mental disorders and substance use disorders, even though I don't worry about the latter of the two because I've never used any illegal substances in my life. Although it can cause impairment, particularly in modern society, many people with ADHD have sustained attention for tasks they find interesting or rewarding, known as hyperfocus. So like maybe for somebody like myself, it will involve wrestling because that's really one of my biggest interests in life. Let's see, causes are unknown, Management recommendations vary by country and usually involve some combination of medications, counseling, and lifestyle change as well. For medication, I was temporarily on the medication known as bupropion, which was for depression and ADHD. The problem is when I was given that, it had absolutely no effect. And for some reason, the therapist thought, okay, it's not working, why don't we give you a bigger diagnosis of the medication? That just made both issues worse. The counseling part did not last long, because we found out that our insurance was not covering these meetings, and then lifestyle changes, I don't recall ever going through any. Let's see, anything else before we go through the symptoms. ADHD, its diagnosis and treatment, been considered controversial since the 1970s. Controversies have involved clinicians, teachers, policymakers, parents, and the media. Most healthcare providers accept ADHD as a genuine diagnosis in children and adults, and the debate in the scientific community mainly centers on how it's diagnosed and treated. The condition was officially known as ADD from 1887. Prior to the 80s, it was just known as hyperkinetic reaction of childhood. So I guess since 87, it's gotten its own diagnosis, or a different clarification. Signs and symptoms. So it's time to see which ones I relate to, because initially the reason I started doing this one was video was because I saw a post from my ex called the Adhd Iceberg, and I started to see some of the symptoms, and I'm like, oh, why don't I finally talk about this? Because I've never really discussed this outside of maybe one video in my entire 11 years on this website. Let's see. Academic difficulties are frequent, as are problems with relationships. Well, the academics stuff... Oh, yeah, let me start from the beginning because I jumped forward a bit. Inattention? Yeah, it tends to happen. Hyperactivity, restlessness in adults. Well, I am pretty much a pro in the restlessness part. Disruptive behavior, perhaps impulsivity, maybe. But academic difficulties, like I said, for me, it wasn't a case of just, like, being bad at school. I just did not care for freshman and sophomore years. And then once junior and senior year happened, that's when things started to improve. Something maybe difficult to define, hard to draw a line with normal levels. Yeah. Till of a sudden, my ADHD is kicking in. I ain't paying attention. Anyway, let's go through the DSM-5 symptoms that we got here, and then we'll see what goes on below here. Some more following symptoms in children and 5 or more in adults, excluding situations where these symptoms are better explained by another psychiatrist or medical condition. Frequently overlooks details or making careless mistakes. Well, I think some people can come up with that answer based on their own observations of myself. Often has difficulty maintaining focus on one task or play activity. Well, that, yes. I've noticed that quite often. I know there's one thing that was mentioned involving ADHD. I'm going to have to see through this article if it's ever mentioned. So I'll get to that in just a bit. Often appears not to be listening when spoken to, including when there is no obvious distraction. Well, for me, sometimes I have to have people repeat themselves to me because, like, if I'm focused on something, I don't initially hear or pay attention to what somebody's saying if they just come out of the blue and, like, say something to me. So it's like they have to get my attention first before speaking. So maybe that could count as well. I'm not sure. Like, if I'm at work and I'm focusing on getting work done, I'm not initially going to be able to hear or pay attention to what somebody's just saying to me through my ear if I don't immediately have focus on them, like if it's something out of the blue. So maybe that could count. I'm not sure. Frequently does not finish following instructions, fail and complete tasks. That that kind of happens to me, like if I'm taking notes for my podcast. Like with work, I got no problem because it's usually just the same thing over and over. But it's like if I'm trying to send instructions for myself, like say, get this topic done for a future episode on my podcast, sometimes I eventually come back to it, but I don't initially get it done like right away. So, it often struggles to organize tasks and activities, to meet deadlines, and keep belongings in order. Yeah, I mean, organization has never been my strong point. I think that's been established since I was in middle school. Like, that was a big thing. Deadlines, I think I might have had some of those points with videos, but I don't recall doing those in school. At least to my recollection. Frequently reluctant to engage in tasks that require sustained attention. Maybe, but it's not. It's hard to say. Frequently loses items, including those required for tasks. Well, it really can be a mess. I guess it's the case where I don't know where everything is if I move them. Distracted by irrelevant things, including thoughts in adults and teenagers. That happens a lot. I mean, a lot. Like, even for me, I get distracted. Like, if something comes to my peripheral vision, I suddenly lose focus on what I'm focusing on to see what caught my eye. But that's happened so many times with these. I did not know that was a thing until... how old must I have been? I think it had to... I had to have learned this before I was 21. Because I did not know that was a thing. Because, like, I heard it in a meeting once when I was going through Michigan Works for, like learning skills about getting a job and everything, and going through their services. Then somebody mentioned it during a meeting once, and I was like, oh, that's why that keeps happening to me. Like, somebody just mentioned out of the blue once. Often forgets daily activities or is forgetful while completing them. Well, really, it's hard for me to forget because it's just been, for me, daily activities just been the same thing day after day. It's just like, get up, shower, dress, go to work, come home, maybe get videos done, and then just sleep. It's like a basic repetitive pattern, so it's... I don't think that can really count. Then hyperactive impulsive is often fidgeting or squirming in seat. I might have had it when I was in high school, but I don't remember. Sometimes I have it when I'm here at home because, like, I can't do that at work because I'm rarely ever sitting down ever. But here, like, when I'm in my chair, if I'm uncomfortable, I kind of squirm, get in different positions, so maybe... It's hard to say. People has trouble sitting still during dinner, homework, at work. Well, again, like, I'm usually having dinner here at my desk all the time. Work, I'm never sitting. So I don't think that can really count. Frequently runs around in inappropriate situations. Restlessness. Sometimes... Yeah, sometimes that part kind of happens, but that's, like, usually during downtime at work. Like, if I'm not just sitting around, like, if I'm actually not, like, physically exhausted, I'll just walk around a bit. So maybe that can kind of count. It's hard to say. Often cannot quietly engage in leisure activities or play. I don't think that really counts towards me. I can easily do stuff quietly, at least on my own. Frequently seems to be in constant motion or uncomfortable when not in motion. Yeah, that kind of happens. I even, especially like when I'm in bed or something, like I can feel my body twitch, like legs twitch. But it's like, maybe it's because I'm just so used to constantly being on the move because I'm at work and like there's rarely any rest periods. That's hard to say. Often talks too much, sometimes. I can see that. Often answers the question before it's finished or finishes people's sentences. Yeah, I'd say that's kind of a thing. Especially the sentence part, I don't know about the question. Unless it's something that's pretty obvious, it's being said. Often struggles to wait his or her turn, including waiting in lines. Well, maybe that one's hard to say too. Like that, sometimes I struggle if I'm really having to wait like a long time, but I don't know, like I think that can happen to a lot of people if they're waiting an extensive period of time for something. Frequently interrupts or intrudes, including others' conversations or activities, or by using people's things without asking. Sometimes the interruptions happen, but like sometimes at least with me, the only time I tend to do that is like if it's like a group discussion and I'm never able to get a word in. So like that's like the only time I can recall that happening. Let's see any others. Difficulty managing anger more common in children. Yeah, I saw that when I was a kid. I was easily getting pissed off all the time. Let's see anything else in here. Suicidal risk. Well, I don't know if I dare talk about this, relive the story of 2019. But I don't think that had anything to do with ADHD. It was more combined other things. Now, genetics. That's something I'm wondering because there's only one other person I can think of in my head in the history of my family that's ever had ADHD. And that was like my great Uncle Dale. And something I noticed with him as well was he had like a serious stutter. Because like you could hear whenever you were there in person with him or even over the phone. Because I think this thing might also affect me in a way where I think that might be why when I speak it's so fast. Because, like, my mouth is trying to go the same speed as what my brain is functioning. So it's like, I'm thinking something and I'm trying to quickly speak in order to not have my mouth fall behind what my brain is thinking. That's why I speak so fast. Because otherwise, if my brain's going faster than my mouth, then I'm going to stutter and lose my train of thought. So that might be a thing. Let's see, I've already been through the diagnosis. Medication didn't help. In fact, let me see if I can find it. Because I know I found this through Facebook. Ah, there it is. Adhd Iceberg. This is the exact thing I saw. Because what people think compared to what ADHD actually is. Because people think it's generally two different things. Trouble focusing, which is common, and fidgeting. But there are also things below the surface, which goes without saying. Let me try to see what ones I can easily describe or at least kind of relate to. I don't get why Bing is doing this. Let's see. Poor sense of time. Typically. All or nothing. Perhaps it's kind of hard to say there. Sensory processing disorder. Maybe that's hard to say. Financial problems. Yeah, but that's for a certain reason. Anxiety, I've been going through that, especially this year. It's been out of control. Uncontrollable fidgeting, I think just depends on the situation. Trouble recalling commonly used words. Sometimes, like, you get to that point where you want to use a word, but then you're snapping your fingers, then you're trying to remember a certain word that you're trying to use. Difficulty maintaining relationships, yeah, that kind of happens. Depression, that's been going on since my high school years, even before the diagnosis. Sleeping problems, oh, yes. Yes. Without a shadow of a doubt. Hyperfixations, yeah, that's pretty obvious for me, especially like with wrestling and video games, mostly wrestling, because like that's really all I got. Auditory, that's hard to say. Some of these, like, I easily know. Difficulty following, maintaining conversations, yeah, that can kind of happen. Time to time. Executive dysfunction, not sure. Mood swings, kind of had that happening, but that was in the past. Focus, even if there are no distractions, yeah, that can happen too. Like, you want to do, like, different things, like, here. Rejective sensitive dysmorphia, not sure what that is. Regulating emotions, I've noticed that as well, especially over the last few years. Chronic unemployment, surprisingly, this has not happened. Losing items relentlessly, that can tend to happen. I usually search through trying to find something. Poor impulse control, I guess, yeah. Forgetting to eat, sleep, go to the bathroom. This I never forget. Like, for me, if I don't do something, it's because of a time crunch. Switching tasks or inability to stick with one, well, yeah. Like, if my task at least is like, that's even happening just as of today. Like, I'm trying to, like, do some, like, I've got my gaming PC going off with WWE 2K17. I got my TV over here with the Switch, trying to catch up on videos to, like, bounce. So, yeah, maybe. Focus on things that, even if there are interests, yeah, that also kind of ties in with trouble focusing. Choice paralysis, I'm gonna have to look up what that is. But forgetting thoughts 0.2 seconds after having them, the only time, like, I think that can be happening, like I just mentioned, with speaking fast, because, like, you're trying to act on or speak on what you just thought of. So that's why I speak fast, like, trying to quickly process what my brain was just thinking, otherwise I lose my train of thought. But I think that is the most common thing where that happens to me as well, is like, if I want to look something up on the internet, then as soon as I open up a web browser, then I stop and think to myself, what was I going to look up again? And then I eventually remember it later. So yeah, certain ones I can easily relate to. But anyway, I think this video's gone on long enough. Let me know what you all thought in the comments section below if you wish about your thoughts on ADHD. Does anybody have any stories they would like to discuss with their experiences on this? Please do so in the comments. Anyway, thanks for watching, folks. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace out, and good day, everybody.